Hi friends, it's Angie Power Disney, angelascashes.org. I feel terrible, I'm not well. But I've got a burning in my belly to get something out there. And it's been a sequence of events since doing 5 interviews with Lisa Meister, an American SRA survivor who also has a podcast series, a YouTube channel. And people reached out to me after those interviews, and different parts of the jigsaw started to come together. I had disclosed about medical injuries in hospital and finding too many to be coincidental. And a survivor from Scotland reached out to me with almost identical medical injuries and saying, I wonder, was this a deliberate thing, traumatic births for experimentation purposes? I then reached out to another survivor who's a published author, and she had the research on that. So I'm hoping to be able to platform that with Lisa and the Scottish survivor in the next week or two. But then I came across a documentary about the workhouses in Victorian England and Scotland, the poor house it was called in Ireland, and it reminded me of my mother's godmother, after whom she was named. This godmother was called Dorothea, and my mother was named Dorothy, and she was the matron of a workhouse in London, and she left my mother quite a substantial amount back in the 70s. Yeah, 70s, 80s, £25,000, which back then was quite a lot, as leaving something to a goddaughter. But she also left her vast amounts of exquisite lace and linen work, just exquisite. And much of it was made into vestments for Catholic priests and bishops and cardinals. And ironically, my mother gave a lot of that inheritance to my elder sister, who lost it. She separated from her engineered partner, 20 years older than her, and she left her belongings in storage, and he defaulted. He promised to pay the storage in exchange for child support or something, and he defaulted, and it all got sold or scrapped or lost, whatever happened to it. And as I watched this documentary about the poorhouse, I started to feel shame that I'm glad that we didn't inherit that vast amount of lace and linen made by poor people in slavery conditions, somehow appropriated by the matron of the workhouse, and much of it left to my mother as her goddaughter. And then when I wrestled with the thing of feeling guilty, that how could I have come from such a wicked, I'm going to share this documentary both in the comments, in the description box, and in a blog. And as I was weighed down with this shame of this woman is in our family heritage, I thought, wait a minute. MKUltra, no consent medical experiment survivors are encouraged to examine who's been around you. If you want to do research, don't bother going outside of your own story. Look at who was around you all your life. And so I realized that there's a pattern here. So this Dorothea, the matron of ostensibly Catholic workhouses, my mother was Protestant. Her family, the Dupre family, were French Huguenots who fled, Protestants who fled France under persecution by the Catholic Church. And but my mother got groomed into the Catholic Church, despite being a Sunday school teacher and a Bible scholar and Bible camps, and on a trajectory to marry a vicar or a lawyer or something, you know, professional within the Protestant tradition in the UK, Church of England, she got hijacked, offered a scholarship to a private Catholic school, the Ursuline Convent in Brentwood in Essex. And then she got afforded a Catholic. Well, it wasn't then, it was much before that. My mother died 3 years ago, so I can't ask her more about her godmother, Dorothea, after whom my mother was named Dorothy. But the fact that many of the exquisite, handmade, sweatshop, torturous, beautiful products made were vestments for Catholic priests, bishops, and cardinals. So I can only presume that somehow she had a Catholic godmother. How did that happen? Well, then that brings me on to my godparents and my namesake. I was named Angela after my father's older sister, Sister Angela Marie, Mother Superior, Mother Provincial, from an order whose mother house was in Normandy, l'Abbaye de Saint-Sever-le-Vicomte, obéissance jusqu'à la mort. The mother house was in a previously 12th century Benedictine abbey and very heavily Jesuit influenced. And that Auntie Mary, we called her Auntie Mary the Nun because her name had originally been Mary, but her nun name was Sister Angela Marie, and I was named after her. And she covered up abuse extensively in my family, including many times that I was sent to her mute and broken, physically bruised, battered, unable to walk, unable to talk. And she covered it up. She just hid me in various convents or adjacent bed and breakfasts, wherever. She just hid me until I could function again, and then returned me to my abusive parents. So Sister Angela Marie, also my godmother, Lieselotte Faber, her mother, Helena Marsen, was working for my father in RAF Vegberg Hospital, a military hospital which I believe was deliberately built, purpose-built for experimentation purposes. And Frau Marsen, my beloved Omar, I called her, was working in the kitchen for my father. And for some reason, my parents chose to allow her daughter to become my godmother, Lieselotte Faber. Lieselotte Faber was married to a paedophile, convicted paedophile. Frau Marsen, Helena Marsen, knew that this husband of her daughter, her son-in-law, Herbert Faber, had been convicted for exposing himself in a children's playground. But this was all kept hush-hush. I didn't find this out for decades. And this paedophile, Herbert Faber, abused myself very severely for 3 summers in a row, abused my sister, and probably abused dozens more in the vicinity of Mönchengladbach and Hausen, Düsseldorf, Schwarzwald, just a monster that never got caught. And so I just feel that there's a connectivity between people being placed around us, especially for generational victims of MKUltra or no consent medical experiments from the womb or from the generations. I believe both my grandfathers, my English grandpa, I believe was, well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say he was British Intelligence Services, but certainly at least 2 of his sons, my uncles were. And my Irish granddad was a generational, lost bloodline, but very highly adept ritual abuser and sexual abuser and physical abuser, proliferate, paedophile. So I'm just tracking it down the generations. I really encourage you to watch this documentary about the workhouses, the poorhouses in the UK and Ireland and many other countries. And one of the shocking parts was they talked about how if the poor could not afford to bury their dead, they would be used as for autopsies, dissection. And think of every experiment that might have made you feel queasy in biology or chemistry or whatever at school. Dissection, like frogs or mice. It was considered that if the state had been good enough to work you like slaves in the poorhouse, you owed a debt that if you died, they could use your bodies for experiments. And I've talked about this. I've suffered horrendous medical abuse. And I talked about in 2014 in the Martyr Hospital, in a teaching hospital, where my body, I felt like a cadaver. I felt like students were being let loose on me to pass different units of their teacher training, regardless of whether I needed those procedures or not. And it was a horrific experience that has left me permanently disabled. So I think that's it for now. That's an overview. But I was advised years ago, in your recovery, in recovering memories and healing from them, take a look at who was around you. Like the first boy that dated me was from a gangster family in Newcastle, the Richardson family. And he was one of the made good guys that joined the British Army and went on to be a sergeant and went on to, when he came out, to be a multimillionaire. There's no accidents. There's no accidents. You know, the German diplomat that was 25 years in my life, the Deutsche Bank German that got sent in a decade ago on me, that just non-stop. And, you know, the roommate on my houseboat in the 80s, you know, who also turned out to be, I would suspect, an agent. And it's not to make you completely paranoid. Maybe there were the odd good people around you, but certainly it's worthy of examination to see who surrounded you, who were your godparents, who were you named after. These look at this documentary that I'm going to share about the poorhouse, and this whole chain of thought and dot joining came together because my mother's godmother was the matron of one of these houses of horror. And yes, I'm glad we didn't inherit, you know, those beautiful lace and linen pieces that were made out of blood, sweat, and tears of those enslaved. God bless people. Check the links. If you can support my work or my existence, please do. There's a GoFundMe. I'm on disability. I'm fighting the disabilities, and I try to supplement my income with journalism and activism. God bless.